Well, good evening again, everybody. This is Lynn Gardner. I want to welcome you to our team call, what has been our team call, the H2O team call, and we switched it up here just temporarily for me to bring forth a message. I was real excited. You know, I saw a course entitled Dream Again by Bruce Wilkinson, and I know that that's been a struggle for me in my life, and from a business standpoint and a spiritual standpoint, I see people struggling with, having any kind of dream, and the Bible says without a vision, a people perish, and so it's important that we, recognize those dreams and build upon those dreams, and I'm having a good time just kind of giving you the summary of what I've learned each week in this course. So far, at least for me, it's been a very interesting journey. I think you all know that I've done some serious searching in my life in the last few years. I've gone through a journey where I just wanted to understand some things. I wanted to try to figure out, Lord, I know where I am today, but what was my role in getting there? How did life turn out to be what it is? And I was able to see roadblocks and things that I needed to change my mindset, and those things were made so crystal clear to me. So it's a really awesome time in my life. But, there was still something missing for me. Even in my business, I've had goals and, visions and things like that. I've always had some variation of that. I really didn't dream in my life, right? And so that was just something that I had never really done. A lot of it, I think, had to do with in my childhood, things were so temporary that I just really didn't stick with anything. So, anyway, I've had to learn to dream again. So this study entitled Dream Again was of great interest to me. Again, I know the work of Bruce Wilkinson. He was the author of the Prayer of Jabez, and he was also the developer of Walk Through the Bible that many Christian leaders, embarked upon. Just a man of excellence. So I knew what I was getting, so to speak. So, I was very inspired to take this course myself. But what I personally wasn't prepared for is just to be able to see so early on in this course, threads of my life, my gifts, my talents, everything kind of coming together and bringing clarity to what I should be doing, all those things that are necessary to fulfill my dream. And we talked about identifying our gifts and our talents. Hopefully you've made that little list, just a very natural list of what you think, what are your gifts and your talents. Everybody's got something out there, right? And so when you do that, you start to see the root of the dream is already within you. We've talked about how you don't plant that seed of your dream. It's not about just what you like to do or what you wish you could do kind of thing. It's something that's been planted within you, and it's supposed to be watered and nurtured and grown. And we talked about, again, where those dreams come from, and they may be your passion. I'll give you a good example of putting myself out there, as I look at some of my gifts and talents, if you will. For me, I've always loved having a positive impact on the life of another person. Always. I've always loved that. Before I was a Christian, since I'm a Christian, I like it in friendships. I like it with my family. I love having a positive impact on the lives of others. I've also been gifted with words. Some of you are so kind and so complimentary about, like, the front porch posts that I do. Believe me, it's 110% God. He speaks, I write. But he does give me that ability. It's a gift, right? I love to write. I love to train. I love to take people to a new level in their spiritual walk or their business life or whatever. I love those things. So I'm, in my dream is in the works, right? So all these little pieces of my life that I would see here and there and everywhere, I'm seeing come full circle and understanding that he didn't just give me the gifts, to do what I do. He was planting a seed, and I need to be using that seed. We've talked, we talked about how everybody has a purpose, right? Everybody's got a dream somewhere. The fact that you refuse to reveal it, or you don't recognize it, or you think you just don't have one, that's not a good enough excuse. You were born for a purpose, and God didn't overlook anybody. And I don't know what your dream is, but you're either too scared to look at it, not motivated to even consider it, or maybe you're just too lazy to try. I don't know. But he was talking about, Bruce Wilkinson was talking about how he wrote the Prayer of Jabez, and it really just got wildly popular for a long time, bestseller, on the list for month after month. And he was on a lot of shows, interviewed by a lot of people, and he was on a Christian network. He didn't say who. And this woman interviewed him, and at the end of the interview, he said, "Will you do one thing for me?" And she said, "What is that?" And he said, "Will you pray the Prayer of Jabez I think he said 3 times a day. I might be confused with the scrolls that I'm doing, but every single day for a month, will you pray? And at the end of the 30 days, will you write about it? If he did nothing, write about it. If he did something, write about it. And she said, no way will I do that. And he said, well, why wouldn't you do that? And she said, because I don't want things to change. I have a couple of kids and a full-time job, and my plate is full, and I wouldn't want him to bless me with more. How sad is that, right? She was not willing to step outside of her boundaries. We've talked about the danger of not understanding that we will always have reality to deal with. In other words, you have this dream going on, working toward the dream, but you also have a life that you're living. So, things get in the way. You might not be well, or you might have challenges with your children, or you might have, things around your home, or you might be busy at work, whatever. You're always going to have life going on. It's not like we say, oh, I finally see the dream, and it just magically happens in 20 minutes or less. It's going to be a journey. But when we have unrealistic expectations throughout that journey, we can easily get off track. We set ourselves up for defeat. The first thing that happens is disappointment, which of course is, not failing to meet our expectations. And then if we don't get a handle on it, we go to discouragement, which means, of course, lacking courage. We lose our courage over our whole dream, right? If we don't get a handle on that, it goes to disillusionment, where we start telling ourselves, well, it probably wasn't real in the first place, and you throw yourself all kinds of doubts. And if we still don't get a handle on it, we go into despair, we lose our hope, we lose our vision, we lose everything. So we cannot afford to do that. We have to also, as we're embarking on our dream, have a very realistic look at the way life is. We talked about the parable to the minas that you find in the Bible, and how our efforts, everything about our lives, can be multiplied if we stay on focus. And how, as an example we were given, what if you were entrusted with something? Back in the day, in the Bible times, an estate owner would entrust that estate with somebody back home while he went off for months and months and months. And the expectation wasn't just that, that estate would still be there, but would it have grown the way it would normally have grown? So we looked at that. If you were entrusted with a business or maybe a portfolio for somebody, and they were going off for a year or two and said, hey, Lynn, keep this for me and do the best that you can do with it, would I be content with just when they got back home that, the money was still there? Or would I say, oh, man, I just want to please them. They've trusted me with this. I want to make the best of it. Would I make the best of it? And the same is true for us. God gives us a lot. He gives us things and trusted us with things. He's given us the ability to do big things in our life and to fulfill the dream he planted. But are we content with just saying, I'm okay if I can just coast by, right? I would hope not. So we have been given gifts and talents, and we've been entrusted with big things in our life, starting as Christians with the Great Commission. We're told what we're supposed to do, and it's not to sit there like a spiritual slug and keep your faith all to yourself. We're supposed to be doing something for him with our faith, right? Are we motivated to do all that we can do or to be all that we can be? Are we content just getting our spiritual ticket punched and just content in all ways, spiritually, financially, in every way? Again, that's not good, because without a vision the people perish. I would assume that many of the guests on the call tonight share my faith. That's usually the case, so you hang up early because it's not something I can't talk about. But, I would assume that most of you do, and I hope that you understand that you have a purpose to fulfill while you're here on this earth. I can't tell you spiritually, when you finally get it, when you finally look at, stop looking at, well, what good am I, or what purpose is there in my life, and you finally understand that you've got to seek that purpose, that you were born for your purpose. It's an exciting time. But for those of you who don't share my faith, I think it's also safe to assume that you got to believe there's some sort of purpose for you being here in this life at this very moment in time. I mean, whatever you give credit to, you've got to believe there's something behind it. You see, you could have, and I could have been born at any point in time in the history of the world. We could have been born to any set of parents God chose for us to be born to. Nothing about you, not the timing, not your life, not your history, not your looks, not your personality, nothing about you is a mistake. You have not been overlooked by God. You're exactly what you're supposed to be in terms of how God designed you. So if you were put on this life at the precise moment in time, and your genes are precisely what they were intended to be, how could you not see that there must be a bigger plan, a bigger purpose, a bigger mission for your life? God has work for you and I to do, and He's planted a seed of that dream within you, right? So are you doing it? There is a big difference between having faith, that saving faith that we know, and living out your faith. Once you've left this world, there won't be any more living out your faith. This is it. We have a certain season in life, and God knows our days, and that this season that we're living and breathing is the time to be living out our faith. But, if we don't do that while we're here, there's not going to be any making up for it later on. It'll be too late. We have our chance to do what we were born to do. So do you do it? Bruce Wilkinson said a day without doing something for the kingdom of God is a wasted day. Can you even imagine that? How convicting is that? How many days of our lives have we spent that, again, as long as we had our spiritual ticket punched and nothing tragic was happening in our family, we were content. But to spend one day not doing for the kingdom of God is a wasted day. Is doing something just existing? I don't think so. Is doing something just being willing to say, blessings to somebody on the street? Is doing something merely believing and having that faith in the first place? Or does doing something actually require that you take action? The parable of the minas that we talked about, was really, and literally, by the way, hundreds of scriptures in the Bible you'll read confirms that we're required to take action. And nowhere does it say, just trust me, sit on a rock, say some prayers, It doesn't say that. We're supposed to keep going and persevering every single day that we live and breathe. So it requires action. We're told how to work, in the Bible. It talks about, business principles. What principles do we apply to our work? How to be people of integrity, how to interact with other people, how to treat others. And we're told what to do with our money. We're told that a man who doesn't work doesn't eat. We're told that he who gives us the ability, he's the one who gives us the ability to create wealth. You remember the parable of the minas. Some of you on the line may be kind of looking at this dream thing. Maybe you're looking at it in terms of your career, things that you need to rebuild your life. Many people I deal with have taken hard blows in life. The economy turned, they lost jobs, they lost homes, they lost marriages, they lost all kinds of stuff, Many of you might just be tuned in to look at that financial recovery. And some of you might actually get offended. You don't like to talk about money. You think when Christians talk about money, we're preaching all kinds of nasty stuff. But if you know your Bible the way I know my Bible, we're definitely supposed to be out there working hard and earning money, okay? That's the way it's supposed to be. We're told to use the gifts, and not just the spiritual gifts, right? To use the gifts and to work out our gifts with our hands, in the natural form of the way we were created. We're told to work, so y'all can't get around that. Nowhere does it talk in the Bible about retirement, right? Imagine that some people think their dream is, I'm going to get a whole ton of money, and then I'm going to get a fishing boat. That's all I'm going to do all day long, go fishing. Well, good for you, but that may be your desire to sit back, but we were wired to work. And so wouldn't it be better if you could instill that dream and instill that passion within you that will last you all the days of your life, into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It really doesn't matter, right? We were not wired to sit back and take it easy. So there's no way around the fact that we were not instructed to just accept Christ or just to come to our faith and then walk around whistling hymns and running from, the work that we're supposed to be doing. It's as if it's just an obligation. It's not just an obligation. Without money, there isn't much we can do to support the kingdom of God, whether we like it or not. It takes money. I mean, the money has a purpose all throughout the Bible and through today, right? Our dream or our work or our ministry ties all of that together, every piece of it. So were you born with what it takes to get the job done? You bet you were. You were born with everything you need to fulfill the dream that He's planted within you. So keeping that in mind, why aren't we moving ahead? What happens to those dreams? Well, what happens, other than the practical things, like the reality of life gets in the way. We didn't expect reality to still be there. We went from disappointment, discouragement, disillusionment, despair. We gave up. But that dream didn't go away. It's still in there. That dream, by the way, isn't always just one dream. For me, I have one dream, and that dream is to be debt-free. But my dream is far bigger than that. It goes well beyond just being debt-free, right? And so it doesn't have to be just one dream. But what happens is that dream is so big. It's bigger than you. My dream's bigger than me. You can't look at you practically look at this dream or what you're going to be chasing and think, well, it's a piece of cake. You can't look at it because it's always bigger than you. And you know what? The more you build toward your dreams, some dreams you'll actually accomplish, guess what? The next dream's going to be even bigger. It's always going to be bigger than you because God's bigger than you. So, we can't allow ourselves to buy into something's too big. We can't comprehend it. We just have to acknowledge the fact that God's hand has planted the seed. There's a seed of that dream within you, and you've got to believe it can be accomplished. So if God planted the seed of the dream, and if God equipped you before you were ever born to do the job that He intends for you to do, we just can't fathom that dream can be a reality. That's the problem. No matter what kind of dream it is, because it's bigger than our ability to comprehend. But that doesn't negate it. You can't say, well, it's too big. I can't do that. I can't accomplish this. You can't do that. You've got to acknowledge your gifts and talents, acknowledge what that dream is, and work toward the dream. And God's bigger than any of that dream. And the other reason is we're fearful. We don't move forward because we're fearful. Well, I've taught courses on fear, and that's a whole different story. But in this case, it's natural to be fearful. It's big, I mean, do you think that David didn't have a little bit of fear when he was going toward Goliath? Do you think Moses didn't have moments of fear when he's like, oh my gosh, we got all these people, we got nothing to eat? Of course, it's fear. There's some fear involved, right? Fear could never take over. You can't allow that. But it's a natural response when you're looking at a dream that's bigger than you are. We can't live in that fear, but it's totally natural. So again, if we have the seed and we have the dream and we have everything that it'll take to accomplish it, what's happening? Well, sometimes we just lack motivation. Believe it or not, God sometimes is not a big enough motivator for most of us. We need to get outside of the boundaries that we draw around ourselves, and we need to get outside of the boundaries in the box that we put God in. If He planted the seed, trust me, you're equipped. For those of you on the call who have heard me speak these words before, please forgive me, because almost every day that I live and breathe and I'm out there in a very full life, right, almost every day I'll hear people say, well, I can't be like you, or I can't do what you do. Well, here's a news flash. You aren't supposed to be like me, and I'm not supposed to be like you. And you aren't supposed to do what I do necessarily, and I'm not supposed to be doing what you're doing. I'm not you and you're not me. We're uniquely created, right? You may look at somebody, I'll take our business for a second, and there are people that will not move forward because they'll say, I can't do what you do. In other words, they can't speak or in front of groups or whatever. And if I'm going to start saying to them, let's make a list of your natural gifts and talents. My guess is that they look at maybe longingly be able to do something somebody else does. Like I might look at somebody that can play the guitar and sing, and I'm just like, wow, I wish I could do that. But I don't have the natural gifts and talents to back it up. It's just something that I admire. But when you look at your natural gifts and talents, you ought to be dancing in the street to see how equipped you really are. I don't have your gifts and talents, and you don't have mine. And that doesn't make any one of us better or inferior to the other. It means we're each unique, and we've been designed to do a specific job. I don't have your dreams, and you don't have mine. You might look at my dreams and say, what are you, nuts? It's too big, it's too little, whatever, it's too bold. I don't know what you'd say if you looked at mine. And I might look at yours and say, well, why aren't you dreaming big enough, right? You don't have mine, and I don't have yours, and we're not supposed to. But where there is a seed, there can always be a harvest. Bruce Wilkinson shared this great story about a woman who came up to him after a workshop and said, I can't do what you do, and so I really can't do anything. And he said, wait a minute, what is it that you have a passion about? What do you wish you could do? And she said, I have a passion for old people. Like the ones in the nursing homes, and, it doesn't seem like anybody ever comes to visit them. So I really have a passion for those people, making them feel special. And he said, well, what would you do? How would you do that? Make them feel special. And apparently she's known for her tea parties, like really elegant tea parties. And she said, you know what I do? I go in there and I would have a tea party, and everybody would get dressed up like they had some place to go. And I would serve them with excellence and make them feel so special. And he said, and then at the end of it, you could like get up and share the gospel, right? And so he said, well, when are you going to do that? What's stopping you? You have all the teapots, you have all the teacups, you have that's your dream. What are you going to do with that? So that woman who stood before him and said, I can't do what you do. I can't do anything. I'm useless. I'm worthless, right? He just triggered her dream a little bit. And, you know, she went in to do her first tea party. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after this conversation. And she kept doing them, and then she did them more days a week, and then she did them down the road. And today, hundreds of senior citizens are blessed with that tea party, but more importantly, they're blessed with the gospel every single week. All from that woman who said, I can't do anything. So don't ever say, I can't do anything, right? But you see what I'm saying? It was her natural desire, talents, gifts that came together. She was gifted at that. But when you put it into action the way it's supposed to be, it can be multiplied and beyond if you'll just do it. So if God said to go forth and multiply, he wasn't just talking about the time of creation, you know, with people. He also refers to that in the gospel. Go tell everybody, right? So, you know, the more people you tell, the more believers we have. And even as our money, when it refers to our money in the parable of the minas, we're talking about multiplication. So why are we not multiplying? And what would really happen if you multiplied your efforts? You know, if you looked at your gifts and talents, started looking at that dream for something unique that you're intended to accomplish, and you multiplied your efforts, what would really happen? You know, if it comes down to motivation, it's kind of scary. He was also sharing this fascinating story, and it really drove it home for me, so I share it with you, and that is he was talking about he was asked to come into this meeting, this big group meeting, if you will. There were a number of pastors in this meeting, and it was for a denomination that was close to dying out. So he was brought in to, you know, be a speaker and try to help these folks through this. And so he went one by one. And he asked the pastors, you know, how long have you been at your church, and how many people were there when you came, and how many people are there today? And frankly, I can't remember all the details, but I do remember one because the numbers were so shocking. And he said this person said that they had 60 people in the church when they came there 22 years earlier. And he said, how many are there today? And he said 68. 68 people. Do you really think that, I mean, maybe he's chasing the wrong dream? I don't know. But he can't be multiplying his efforts and end up with 8 people 22 years after he started the game. There were a number of examples that he gave like that, right? And then he said, well, what would happen if you went up to that same pastor? Let's say it's the pastor of the church with 68 people and said, you know what, I'm wealthy, and I will give you a personal check for you, just for you and your family, of $1 million if you can double the size of your church in 1 year. You think that pastor would double the size of that church? I think he would. You know, that's a sad reality. It was very convicting as I thought about that. There was another example. He said, let's say that, you know, you're in the middle of the church, you're up there ready to preach the message, and the mafia comes in, and you get a rifle stuck in your head and said, if you don't double the size of this church in 1 year, I'm going to take your life. That's very convicting. Would you do it? You bet you would. You know, you thought they were going to come back and kill you and your whole family. You're going to do something, right? That's motivation. So why in the world could we look at, you know, we have the ability to create that $1 million, right? We have the ability, but why would it take something so dramatic? Why wouldn't we just be multiplying our efforts because he's God, right? Because we refuse to run with the dream. So that was very convicting for me, and I hope you'll ponder that yourself, you know, as you think through, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? You know, I have known plenty of people in my life, and you probably have too, that did what I call backing into their wealth. And I see it more clearly now that I'm taking the study. But what do I mean by that? Well, they determined what they wanted to be able to pour into the kingdom financially. So they put a dollar figure on what they wanted to be able to accomplish. They didn't focus on how much they wanted to make. What can I put in my pocket? How big a house can I buy? What kind of, you know, BMW will I get? They didn't look at those things. They put a dollar figure for that dream that they wanted to accomplish for the kingdom. They didn't think about how much they would make. They thought about how much they could give. And it's that kind of motivation, the motivation toward the dream, that will propel them into work. These people that I'm referring to, that's what propelled them, is their motivation to achieve that dream, that financial commitment or that financial drive or dream toward the kingdom of God. I read about, I like to read biographies, and I read about J.C. Penney. I just love this story, and I can't remember the whole thing. It's terrible. That's why I have to go back and read great books, right? But J.C. Penney was a devout Christian, and he went through a horrible time, where he had built up, I don't remember how many stores, and the Depression came, and he lost his wife and his child and his business, flat out broke, and actually checked himself in. He was so consumed with depression, he was convinced he was dying. If you've ever been in depression, you know that that's not uncommon at all, where you're convinced that you're dying because you're so depressed, right? And he heard a church service or something one day, and when he heard the service, the music, he walked down to the service, and the bottom line is that afternoon he checked himself out. He had new hope. His faith had been renewed, right? And that darkness had been taken away. But what I'm getting at is J.C. Penney isn't the only one. He's just one that comes to my mind, that by the time of his death, first of all, the wealth he created post-depression, after he'd lost everything, he multiplied his efforts, and everything he did multiplied because of it. By the time he passed away, and for many years before that, he kept 10% and he gave away 90%. So you see, he multiplied his efforts, and those things turned into financial things that fed the kingdom. Don't ever have a conversation with me about how money's bad, okay? God needs that in the kingdom. So, if we look at that, it is very convicting. We look at how people can back into their wealth and say, this is what I want to be able to accomplish. This is my dream to fund this or to do this for the ministry of God. And when you do that, you'll multiply your efforts and feed off more than you can ever imagine. You can't. God put that seed of the dream within you, and God can do anything he wants, okay? He can walk on water. He created the heavens and the earth. He named all the stars in the sky. He can do anything he wants to do.